afternoon. Come on now, it's Friday. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome. I wish I had that presence when I said it was time for bedtime or something at home, that everyone would just go quiet. Oh, okay. I don't know that it's on. Hold on. That was not me. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. I did not back up. That was not the clown noise coming from me, just for the record. I know that that's often been speculated. Good afternoon and welcome to the Utah, little feedback there. Welcome to the Utah Education Policy Center Bridgeworks Forum. We're fortunate again this week to have Dr. Lynne Perez with us. She's sitting over here to the right. I think many, if not all of you, know who she is. At the Policy Center, like many of you, we seek colleagues and networks of individuals who are going to nurture us, our souls, about what we're doing day to day, who are going to stretch us in how we think about practice and how we enact practice in schools, and importantly, who are going to teach us how to do our practice better. Dr. Perez, who is the Deputy Director for the National Center for Urban School Transformation, does that for us. She is our conduit. She is our conduit to thinking differently. She is our conduit to talking differently. She is a conduit to us doing our work differently. And we've all been grateful for her mentoring and her leadership in the school improvement work that we do. So thank you, and thank you for coming. As Deputy Director for INCUST, along with her other colleague, Dr. Joe Johnson, who started INCUST in 2005, I believe. Lynne joined after being a teacher and professor in 2006. The INCUST is located at San Diego State University and has become a thriving center in the last, what seems to be a long time, but only the last 10 years. But it's predicated on the fact that people like Dr. Perez and her colleague, Dr. Joe Johnson, have spent most of their careers focusing in education on how we can make schools better, how we can make them better places for families and communities to engage with, and what that engagement looks like, and importantly, what we can do in classrooms and in our principal offices and in our district offices to, again, think differently about what can be, the possibilities. And in doing so, they both redirected continuously and reaffirmed our knowledge that you really can't have excellence in schools without having equity in schools. And that anything that we do that deteriorates one or the other side of that takes away from the whole complement of what can be achieved. And so we're fortunate this afternoon to have Dr. Lynne Perez talk with us about teaching and learning in some of the best urban schools in America, and to guide us in our thinking about not only what we've been doing, but more importantly, what we can start doing come Monday morning. And so with that, I'd like you to help me welcome Dr. Lynne Perez to the mic.
Oh my goodness, that was embarrassing. So nice. Thank you very much. I'm going to put this on because I have a tendency to move around and not stay in one place. First of all, thank you so much for being here this afternoon. I want to thank the Utah Education Policies, maybe I'm not going to be able to do that, but we'll give it a try. Utah Education Policy Center for inviting me back. You have the most beautiful city. I think San Diego is pretty nice, and I think maybe Salt Lake rivals it greatly. So it's really good to be here. Today we're going to have some conversation about what we have learned from our study of some of America's highest performing urban schools. And to lead to that, I wanted to share with you kind of what our agenda will look like for our time together. So we're going to start with some welcome. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. Because we have such a lovely crowd here today, we're not going to be able to share individually the introductions as we might with a smaller group, but I think I'll have you share with a shoulder partner, and you can turn and talk to the person sitting next to you with regard to this introduction. And then I will tell you a little bit more about NCUST, who we are, what we do, how we've come to what we've learned from these schools. And then we'll move into just what have we learned? What do we know about how these schools get all groups of students to high levels of achievement? Then we'll spend a little bit of time exploring what does that really look like through a video that I have for you. And then we'll close it down with, okay, so this is what these schools do. How do we go about emulating those practices in ways that help our students to all get to high levels of achievement? So let's start today with, you can introduce yourself to the person next to you or behind you, it doesn't matter to me. If you would tell them what school you're from, and maybe if you know those people, you want to find somebody else. Wait a minute, hold on. So introduce yourself. And then if you would tell them when you were growing up, what did you think was the job of a teacher? When you were growing up, what did you think was the job of a teacher? So you might go back like I did to when I was a little girl in my room playing school by myself. And I think they've already started. Am I wiring? Okay, you can go ahead. They've already gotten away from me. Okay. Ooh, you guys are good. Thank you. Does anybody want to share what your partner said about what he or she thought the job of a teacher was when you were growing up? Anybody want to share? Yes.
All I remember is SRA cards, and you just had to like get one out, read a few sight words, read a little thing, answer questions on the back, and hurry and put it back and get the next one.
Okay, and for those of you who don't remember that, SRA cards were these things that you pulled out of a box and you read and you answered questions. It was about reading. I hated them, but I remember them too. What else? Who remembers what, or who thought when you were a kid, what did you think it meant to be a teacher? What was the teacher's job? Anybody? Yes?
To teach you what you needed to know to grow when you grew up, you would be
Smart.
know stuff and be smart.
There you go. Okay, somebody else. Anybody else have one? Yes.
I've heard of mine is that the teacher's job was to teach her how to read and just read all the time, but not teach her how to whistle because she had to learn how to whistle before she was.
Okay, all right. Very good. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Well, my parents both work,
Okay,
so I thought that's just where I had to go.
to school?
Yeah, I don't remember anything about what the teacher was supposed to do
Okay,
because
that was just your job. Okay. Okay, good. Anybody else? Yes.
Just to sit down and be quiet.
That the teacher wanted you to sit down and be quiet? And do your work. Okay, what else was the teacher's job? What did you think? You grew up to be teachers. I think almost everybody in this room, right? And in your head, growing up, you had an image of what that job was like, right? I have a feeling it turned out to be a little different than that. But what did you think?
I thought my teacher knew everything.
Well, don't we?
Yeah, I could ask her, and she's like, oh yeah, it's this. And so I was like, oh, they're awesome.
That's right. Teachers know everything. I bet even as a grown-up, don't you have friends say to you stuff like, well, you should know you're a teacher. What else? Somebody else, yes.
Just that you get to use
Yes. I know, that was it. Use pointers, use chalk and write on the board. Oh, all those things. Other thoughts to be a teacher? Yes. Be popular with the kids. All right. Yesterday we had some interesting things about it was the teacher's job to tell me I was doing stuff wrong or to send me to the principal's office or stuff like that. What did you want to say?
I would say our conversation, what we didn't know the teacher's job was.
Oh, there you go. What?
So, like, the differentiation for students and their needs and the relationships that you have to have with your students and the collaboration between team members. And then the teacher workday, I figured they were on break just like us.
Sure, of course. Okay, good. Well, thank you for sharing. There's a method to this madness, and hopefully you'll kind of see the connection as we move along. But I appreciate all those images because I know when I was a little girl, I was like you. I thought it was all about standing in front of the classroom and looking nice and pointing, and when I played, I used to put on press-on fingernails, and then so I could point at the worksheet, you know. And I thought that was my job, but I was sadly mistaken. Okay, so I heard a little bit from you, and now I want to share with you who we are at NCUST and why I'm here to talk with you today, what I bring. As Dr. Rohr so kindly explained, NCUST, the National Center for Urban School Transformation, that's why we call it NCUST because it's such a long name, was started with a seed grant, a very small one, by the Qualcomm Corporation in 2005. And they were recognizing that urban education was in trouble, and they wanted the College of Education at San Diego State to begin to do something about that. And so the dean at the time knew of a gentleman named Dr. Joseph Johnson through his work at the Charles Dana Center at the University of Texas and his work in other places like the state of New York. And he tapped on Joe and said, Joe, I want you to come back to your alma mater, and I want you to start this center. And Joe came back, and the first year, the center, the national center, was comprised of Joe and his admin. And they, with some help from their friends, put together our first National Excellence in Urban Education Award program to identify high-performing schools that we could learn from. And he, with his admin and help from a few of his friends, put together the first National Excellence in Education Symposium. We had 8 winners that year. Probably none of those schools would win our award now, because over the last 10 years, we've learned a lot more about what excellence is in urban education. And so I'm here to share with you some of the things that we've learned. NCUST's mission is all about helping schools and districts emulate the practices of these very high-performing urban schools in ways that lead all students to a love of learning and prepare them well for graduation, for post-secondary education, to be in their communities, and to have a successful career. That's our mission. And we do that through 3 key initiatives. And here they are: our Excellence in Urban Education Awards, our National Symposia, and what we call our A+ program. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of these because this is going to ground everything that I share with you today. Let's start first of all with the Excellence in Urban Education Awards. So I mentioned to you kind of where we started with this, but where we've ended up is that this is a national award, and it was back then, that schools from across the country may apply. We have very difficult criteria to meet. The schools that win our award, while many of them have been National Title I schools or National Blue Ribbon schools or distinguished schools, our criteria is more difficult to meet than it is for all of those awards. We recognize these schools through an application process, and they submit a written application along with a DVD of 2 of what they think is the best teaching in their school. So they're 2 little videos, they're supposed to be about 10 minutes long, of teaching and learning that they think is really top. We bring all that information together and we decide who will be our finalists for the award. We look for the schools with the most evidence on paper, but we don't take their word for it. next we have what we call our site visits, and we take teams of educators, scholars, principals of schools that have won our award to the schools that are finalists, and we conduct a day-long visit. And during that day, we interview the principal, we interview the superintendent or his or her designee, we interview the leadership team, the counselors, we've talked to cafeteria staff or custodians, we talk to teachers, of course, we talk to parents, and we talk to students to get their perspective on what's happening in that school. But we don't stop there. We go into every single classroom in the school to observe teaching and learning, because you can talk a great story, but the rubber meets the road in the classroom. And so if what we see in there isn't at our level of excellence, those schools will remain a finalist, but they will not be an award winner. We bring all that data back from all those site visits, and when the executive coaches sit around a table and we make a decision, okay, who are our winners? We have bronze, silver, and gold level winners, gold being the schools with the most evidence of excellence. They win $5,000 and a big, beautiful banner to post in their school. Our silver winners win $2,500, and they also get a banner. And our bronze level winners get a banner. All the winners get an invitation to our national symposium, and I'll tell you about that in just a second. Here's the award criteria that I was talking about. If you're interested in learning more about this, I urge you to visit our website. It's ncust.org, and you can pull down the criteria there to see exactly what it is. But the bottom line is we want schools that serve communities of at least 50,000 individuals. They have to have high rates of students who qualify for free and reduced price lunch. You'll notice it's a 60-50-40 depending upon elementary, middle, and high school. The majority of the schools that win our award are upwards of 95%. They're 95, 98. We've had several 100% of students meeting the qualifications for free reduced price lunch. The schools cannot have selective admission. So these are not schools that cherry pick the kids they teach. They teach the kids who come through the door. We do have charter schools, public charter schools that have won our award, but they also do not have retention or admission requirements. And if there's a lottery for the open seats, the only thing that's on the lottery is the child's name and address. They have very high attendance rates, usually way upwards of 92, but at least 92. Low suspension and expulsion rates. And this is the big one, high rates of proficiency for all groups of students served. So this means that if they have a subpopulation, a significant population of African American students or of Latino or Hispanic students, that group of students needs to achieve at or above the achievement for all students in the state. We don't compare subgroup to subgroup. So it's not that the Latino students are doing as well as the Latino students across the state. It's that the Latino students are doing the same as or better than all kids at that grade level in the state. That piece right there knocks a lot of people out of, you can't even apply for our award. So all our finalists meet these criteria, plus other indications of excellence. We've identified 110 incredible elementary, middle, and high schools over the years. In 22 different states, we do not have anyone in Utah. And we really want schools from Utah. So we're hoping that through the guidance and support of these wonderful people in the room and all of the work that you're doing, that in the next few years we will have winners from Utah. I'm thinking especially this area, but I will take anyone in Utah. So please keep thinking about that. Our second initiative is our National Symposium. And we hold this every year, with the exception of 1 year we didn't have it. This symposium is built around the winners of our award. How many of you have been to the symposium? Okay, 1, 2, okay. We got a couple people here who have been. You might want to talk to them. I'm a little biased, but we have people tell us every year that it's some of the best professional development they've had. The reason is that it's real. You come to the symposium, and the first day, we take people on buses to visit winners in the area, schools that have won or about to win our award. You spend a half day at one school, if it's an elementary, half day at one school, half day at the other school, talking with the principal, walking classrooms, observing, teaching and learning, and if there are teacher collaboration meetings going on, you can peek into those. That's the first day. The second day and the third day are the symposium, and it's all centered around our winners. So each of the winners of our award for 2016 will have its own breakout session, and it's a facilitated breakout session. So you can go in and sit down. The first 25 minutes, the principal presents his or her school, says, here's who we are, here are the challenges we had, here are the programs we use, here's what this looks like and that looks like. But the remaining 45 or 50 minutes is facilitated discussion between the participants and the presenters. So it's really worthwhile. I know it comes at a very bad time for all of you this year because it happens to be March 23rd through 25th. But if you can come, you'll be back by the evening of the Wednesday before school ends. And I urge you, if you can come, it's not too late. You just go to our website. You can register there. If you bring a team, it's discounted. Did I say March? What do I know? It's May. That was a bad time. You guys missed it. It was really good. Sorry. Thank you, May. Thank you for saying. May 23, 24, 25. So the 23rd is the day that you do the site visit. 24 and 25. It ends on the 25th at 2 in the afternoon. So visit our website. I'm done with my plug, although I may plug a little at the end. But at any rate, that's our symposium. And then the last, I already talked about all that. So our third initiative is what we call our Advancing Principal Leadership in Urban Schools. And this is the part of the mission where we take what we've learned from these very high-performing urban schools, and we help a few schools and districts that are interested in emulating those practices. It's done through a network model where we bring a group of probably no more than 4 principals in a district who all lead schools at the same level. So we have a network of elementary, a network of middle, a network of high school. The meetings, the cohort meetings, are facilitated by one of our executive leadership coaches. We have the meetings once a month. They rotate among the 4 schools in the cohort. And it's all about the principals setting an achievement challenge that they have. In other words, they want to raise student achievement levels for their Latino population, or they want to increase English language proficiency for English learners, whatever the case may be. And they have not only us there to help them by sharing with them how these very high-performing urban schools are doing this, but they also have their colleagues who are facing similar challenges to work with in kind of a critical friends sort of an organization. In many cases, it's like a professional learning community. But at any rate, that's typically how we share. We also give presentations. We also provide other kind of support, but that's at the core of how we share what we do with other schools. Anybody have any questions for me about who we are and what we do? I mostly want you to take away from this the schools that we study, because today, as I share with you what we've seen, I'm sharing with you what we've seen in these 110 schools. These are real schools with real human beings facing very difficult challenges who have figured out how to get it right for kids. So it's not coming out of an ivory tower. It's not coming out of somebody's head or imagination about what should be done. This is what we've actually seen in these schools. So we know that these schools are getting all groups of students to high levels of achievement. And we ask ourselves, okay, so what are they doing? How are they able to get kids to high levels of achievement? Nearly every single child every year. What has NCUST learned? Well, the first thing is we've learned a lot. We know a lot about what the schools look like. We know what teaching and learning looks like. We know about the systems and practices they've put in place. We've got a pretty good understanding of what leadership looks like and how those folks behave. But right at the center, the most important thing that we've learned is that in these schools, it's all about the quality of teaching and learning. And I know that doesn't surprise a single individual in here. All those other things matter. Second to teaching and learning is leadership. But teaching and learning is where it's at. What we found in these schools, however, is that teaching and learning in very high-performing schools is qualitatively different than what we see in more typical urban schools. In these schools, students learn more because they're taught in ways that makes it easier for them to learn. And we'll talk about what that means in a minute. They learn more because their teachers are focused on making sure that the kids learn what it is they want them to learn. And we see in these schools that teachers have high expectations for themselves, but they also have them for the kids. And this is much more than the ever popular all kids can learn. So instead of just saying all kids can learn, or I believe that all kids can learn, these teachers act like that's true. And they do this by expecting the same of the kids in their classrooms as they expect of the kids who sleep in their homes. And they learn more because kids are able to master what it is the teachers are teaching them the first time it's taught. You know, all of us know about the RTI pyramid, right? You've got the majority of kids on tier 1. They're getting it with first instruction. Then you have the second tier where there are a few kids, there are always going to be a few kids who struggle to understand for a variety of reasons. And then up at top, tier 1, you should have maybe 1 or 2 or 3 kids up there who need severe intervention for a variety of reasons. So in the typical urban school, the pyramid doesn't look like this. What does it look like? It's flipped, right? Because we have not gotten it right the first time for a variety of reasons. And we have slapped intervention on top of intervention on top of intervention. We've got before school tutoring, after school tutoring, pull-out tutoring, special programs, Saturday schools, summer schools, spring camps. We've got it all because we haven't been able to figure out how to get it right first. And that costs a lot of money. And it costs a lot of effort and time. And it takes years off people's lives when they can't have a Saturday at home, or they don't get home at night until like 7 or 8, right? Or they're getting up to go to school at 6 so they can meet the 10 kids who didn't get it and still haven't gotten it. So, okay, big deal. I've said all that stuff. What is this big difference? I said it was qualitatively different. So what is that? And this is the answer to the question, what does it look like? What does teaching and learning look like in these schools? Oh, I'm going backwards. Let's go backwards. You want to do that one again? I don't think so. Okay, so we're going to turn to the experts who are the winners of our award for this answer. In these schools, we've been able to condense the data down from all the observations we've done to identify 8 instructional practices that we see used consistently in the schools. Now, are they used every day in every classroom by every teacher all day long, no matter what? No, that would be craziness. Nobody can do that. But we do see a consistent core of teachers who use these practices on a regular basis. So I'm going to begin today with the practice at the center because this is the big difference. When I said it was qualitatively different, this is it. At the center of this practice is what we have called focusing on mastery. And this practice is interesting. You know, it took us a while to get to the point where we could say, okay, here are these 8 things we see. And focusing on mastery popped up, but we really hadn't understood the depth of this particular practice, that it wasn't just a practice, but it's a cognitive way, it's a mindset, it's a way of thinking about the job of teaching. We know that across the nation, and it's not just in urban education, I taught in a very affluent school district, and it's alive and well there as well. Most teachers perceive their job to plan and deliver lessons that cover the content, right? You've got either a curriculum that you need to complete, or you've got standards that you need to complete, all in time for everybody's favorite time of the year, the standardized test, right? That's your job. And that's what the majority of teachers believe their job is. And I don't blame them, because that's what I thought my job was too. And that was kind of how I was thought to believe that was my job. In these schools, though, teachers perceive their job differently than more typical schools. I just want to stop here for a second, because this picture tells a story, or I'm going to tell you the story. This picture is from a school that will sort of put into perspective the difference that I'm talking about here. This is a picture from Synergy Charter School, which is in South Central LA. Anybody know where that is, or have you heard about South Central LA? It's not an easy area, right? They've got a lot of struggle with poverty, with all kinds of issues. And this school was started by two teachers who worked for the Los Angeles Unified School District, LAUSD. That's right, LAUSD. And they went into the neighborhood every day and taught in this LAUSD school, and they just got really frustrated with what they were seeing wasn't happening for the students in this neighborhood. And so they said, let's start a school. And so they did. And they started it in a school, in a church. And at night they had to roll up the classrooms or in the office, because the church people would come in and have meetings. And, they went through all that stuff. Eventually they were able to lease space in an LAUSD school in the neighborhood. So Synergy Charter lives in a building that is shared with an LAUSD school that serves the same community, because these kids come from the neighborhood. They're not bused in or it's a neighborhood charter school. The day that we visited this school, when we arrived that morning, all the kids from both schools were out on the playground and they were having a good time, and the principal called them over. They did the pledge and the national anthem, and then the principal and the bell dismissed them. And all the little kids from the LAUSD school went tripping up the stairs to their classrooms, and all the little kids from Synergy went up too to their classrooms, in many cases right down the hall from the kids that were in LAUSD. California used to have what we call our academic performance indicator, which is kind of like your ABCD grading system, lets the public know where the school stands. So the bar in California is to have schools be at 800 or above. The LAUSD, the LAUSD schools API was in the mid 750s. It was 750 or 760, I'm not remembering exactly. This school, 936. Same kids, same neighborhood, two different styles of teaching and learning. And for me, that was like a golden moment. As I stood there, I went, wow, if that doesn't say it, I don't know what does. So in this school and schools like it that have won our award, teachers think about their job differently. In these schools, teachers perceive that it is their job to get every student to master, to learn what it is they want them to learn. So in these schools, if I were a teacher in there, I would likely believe that my job is to make sure that every single child I meet and teach is going to learn what I want them to learn at a deep level. That's a little bit different than focusing on covering the content. Just that word, covering. And I hear teachers say it, and I've said it. well, we got to cover this before this, or they need to be exposed to this material before they take the test. And how's that working for us so far? Not so well, right? So in these schools, they have a different mindset about what their job is. And it's a shift. And I wrote on this slide, when teachers focus on mastery, shift happens, right? It does, because there's a cognitive shift. Oh, wait a minute, all of a sudden, I'm thinking differently about what my work is. My work isn't try to cover everything that I have to cover by the end of the time I have. It's to ensure that whatever I decide I'm going to teach them, they're going to get it, and I'm going to know they got it. That's a very different mindset. Teachers who adopt a focus on mastery believe that all of their students are capable of mastering the content and skills that they have deemed necessary for their success. This is a really big one because I spend a whole lot more time in typical urban schools than I do in these wonderful schools. And I see it every day, multiple times. We still have a problem in urban education with that bullet. We still have people teaching who may say all kids can learn, but they don't really believe the kids have the capacity. And that's just saying it like it is, and that's just what I've experienced. We need teachers to believe this down into their toes, that the children that come in, despite the challenges they have the capacity and the right to learn what our teachers' children learn. Teachers who focus on mastery believe that it's their job to ensure that they learn that. And we often hear teachers say, yeah, but, I mean, come on. These kids are poor. Their dads are in jail. Their moms are standing on the corner. They've got, they have learning disabilities. They don't care. Their parents don't care. And that is so not true. Their parents do care. These teachers say, so what? We can't control all of that. But we can control what happens from the time they walk through our door until the time we send them home at night. And during that time, it's my job to get them to learn what we've decided they need to learn. These teachers believe, and this is a big one too, it's kind of scary. Do I really have the capacity to teach in this way to get the kids who come to my school to learn? These teachers believe that they do, probably because they've had success with it. So if that's what they believe, what they employ, and this is a biggie right here. After we landed on teaching and learning, we landed on some questions that I think I'm going to be sharing with you today that they work on all of the time, teachers and principals. But we also started going, wait a minute, why are we seeing in these schools so much collaborative planning? In almost every one of these schools, teachers are getting together for significant amounts of time per week and planning together what the kids are going to learn and how they're going to learn it, what they're going to take as mastery, and the instruction and strategies and activities, resources, and experiences kids need to have to get to mastery. So collaborative planning is huge. They also employ practices that are likely to lead kids to mastery, and they monitor progress. If we're interested in getting kids to mastery, we need to know if they're getting there. Otherwise, we need to intervene along the way so the kids don't fall through the cracks. So this diagram is just to kind of help you put all of this in a big picture. And you can see that at the center of this mindset is getting all kids to mastery. And that is helped or facilitated using the teaching practices that we see in these schools. And it's all driven by a mindset of mastery. So that's the big thing. The rest of these practices that I'm going to share with you are all in service of getting kids to mastery. There's not going to be anything here where you're going to go, whoa, I never heard about that before. Most of this stuff is very common practice, but it's how it's enacted and with this mindset that it makes a difference. So these are the 8 teaching practices. And As I mentioned a few minutes ago, focusing on mastery is not only a mindset, but it's a practice. There are specific teaching actions that go along with having a focus on mastery. And then you can see the rest of these: introducing content clearly, logically, and concisely, acquiring and responding to evidence of learning, of understanding. This is checking for understanding, but it's also the critical, what do I do when I check and I find out they don't get it? What am I going to do? Connecting the content with student interests, backgrounds, cultures, prior knowledge. Building student vocabulary, promoting successful practice. And then the last two are the affective side of teaching, because all of you in this room know that if the kids don't think you care about them, they don't really care what you know. They're not going to learn from you if they think you don't like them, if they think you don't believe in them. And so those are the last two pieces that we saw consistently in these schools. Together, I just put this one little image up here so that you can see that all of these practices are in service of getting kids to mastery. Let's start with this one. Focusing on mastery. If we're going to focus on getting the kids to learn what it is we want them to learn, we have to be really clear about what that is, right? We have to have a clear idea ourselves about what it is we want them to learn by the end of the year, by the end of the semester, by the end of the unit, by the end of the month, the week, the day, and the end of the period, the end of the instructional adventure. So these teachers know and decide in advance what new information, what skill, what content knowledge kids are going to own by the end of that period. It's that focused and that detailed. In other words, it's not by the end of the week or by the end of this chapter. It's what are you going to learn today and take with you that you didn't have before you came in today. So teachers are really clear about what they want kids to know and be able to do as a result of the lesson. If your lesson doesn't result in any new learning, why are you wasting your time? So these teachers figure that out, and they do that usually through these collaborative planning sessions where they get together, they decide, here's what we want the kids to know and be able to do. Here's the standard. We break the standard down if it's not already done by your curriculum departments. We break it down into the component objectives, and then we look at the objectives and say, okay, this objective, what do the kids actually need to know and be able to do this? How long is it going to take us to teach them that, and how are we going to do that? They also decide what mastery of that is going to look like. If I'm going to get kids to mastery, I'd better have a clear idea of what the heck that looks like. So they make that decision up front. And they also decide, there's lots of deciding going on. They also decide, what am I going to take as evidence of mastery? When am I going to be able to put the stamp on the kid's head that says you have mastered this particular concept or skill? They plan strategically then how to lead kids to this deep level of understanding. They don't leave anything to chance. It's all planned out. And it's not just posting the objective, which we've gotten pretty good at. You know, I've had principals that we work with who have told their teachers, I will see an objective on the board every time I come into the classroom. I want to see an agenda. I want to see this. I want to see that. And teachers, by golly, will do that, right? Sure, I can write an objective up on the board. But then you come into the classroom and you look at the objective and you look at what's happening and you go, I'm not seeing the connection here. So I don't think we've been clear enough with teachers about the purpose of having an objective on the board. It becomes a compliance kind of a thing, but there's not a real deep understanding of why we're asking for the objective on the board. The objective's on the board to drive what the teacher does, but equally as important, it's there to let the kid know what he or she's supposed to know by the end of the period so that child can monitor his or her own thinking and can go out the door and go, ooh, I was supposed to learn how to multiply two-digit numbers, but I'm not really sure I know how to do that yet. Or, yeah, I really got that today. So it's got many purposes. One of the things that we see in these schools, which is often a controversial thing to say, people get really nervous about this, but again, it's not me, it's what we've seen. These schools have gotten very smart in recognizing that they cannot possibly teach all of the standards every year to this level of depth. It's impossible, you'd be dead, and it wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. So they strategically select the standards that they know kids have to have under their belt to go to the next grade. And those are the standards they go deep on. They teach those down into the ground and back up into the sky so that when the kids walk out the door, they've got those standards. And chances are those standards and the knowledge and skill will bleed over into the other ones that maybe they didn't go as deeply on. I'm not going to say they don't touch on those other ones, but the only ones they go deep on are maybe 10 standards for the year in each grade level, 10 or 12 or whatever it is, that you identify by a couple of things. Knowing what your state thinks important, and I'm not naive. I could be a little ignorant sometimes, but I'm not naive in knowing that state tests don't matter. They do. It's high stakes stuff. You can lose your schools, you can lose all kinds of things. So these schools will often look at what are the standards that are most tested on the standardized test. And that may come into play. But the other thing they consider is, what do my kids need? What do the kids in this school need that may be different than the school down the road? And they pick them that way. So that's another big piece about focusing on mastery. The other piece here is teachers' own knowledge of the content. I was trained as a K through 6 teacher, and my certificate was K6 when I graduated from college, but then when I got my first job, I was in another state, and they didn't have K6, they had K8. So now all of a sudden I can teach 7th and 8th grade. Well, hello, I can't teach 8th grade math. I can't even teach 4th grade math very well. But I got a job as a 6th grade teacher, and I frankly did not have, and I had to teach 4 different subjects, I did not have the content or conceptual knowledge in mathematics to be able to teach that the way it should be taught. And I'm going to argue that now I would be in way up over my head because the standards have been hiked way up. We're pulling down standards from grades 7th grade down to 5th grade, and et cetera. So we have teachers like me in the system right now who are teaching content that they may not know, and they are really embarrassed to admit it. And I don't blame them, because what did we say earlier? Teachers are always right, right? You should know this, you're a teacher. And I think that prevents people from coming forward and saying, you know what? I really don't know how to do this. I need your help. That kind of stuff starts to happen in these collaborative meetings when teachers build trust and they begin to do the work that they're actually going to ask their kids to do, and then all of a sudden they go, I can't do this. I need help with this. So we know that teachers spend time here making sure they know the content that they're supposed to teach. Okay, focusing on mastery. So we have this section that we put in our book to help teachers who might read this, principals who might read this, assistant teachers who might read this, who look at it and go, oh yeah, I do that. I do that every day. And we thought maybe having this what it is, what it isn't would sort of push people to think a little more deeply about the degree to which they're doing that. So on the left-hand side, my other right, is what it is to focus on mastery, and then the other is what it isn't. So I'm just going to give you a minute to read that. Any questions about this strategy or mindset? Okay, moving on. The second strategy, introducing content clearly, logically, and concisely. In all the research that's out there in the big world of education research on teacher effectiveness, the one quality or characteristic that bubbles to the top of all the research is clarity. How clear is the teacher? And that's what we found in these schools too, right? If you're not clear, if you don't explain things well, I'm not going to understand what you have to say. So in these schools, we see, as I already said, teachers start with a kind of a task analysis. What is it that the kids need to know? They break down the standard to identify specifically the content or skill they're going to teach. Before they teach the lesson, they identify where might the kids go south on this. I've taught this before. I know that when it gets to multiplying and dividing fractions, kids are having a hard time understanding why when you multiply fractions, the answer's smaller, right? I'm going to teach in a way that tries to avoid that, and I'm going to plan for that. They teach kids strategies to make the learning easier for them. You'll see you'll see an example of that in the video I'm going to show you today, but it may be strategies. If I don't know my times tables, how can I use the ones I know to help me find the other ones? They use graphic organizers, Venn diagrams, research skills. They teach kids how to take notes, again, to help make the learning easier. They scaffold and they use rubrics often, and the rubrics are given before the assignment is completed, so the kids know what to shoot for. They know what the end product is supposed to look like. And they avoid long lectures, even at the high school. We see teachers talking for no more than 10 minutes at a time, and then the work is turned over to the kids. Not all the work, but the discussion moves to the kids. We hear student voices way, way more in these schools than teacher voices. So they're concise in their delivery of their information. Here's the what it is and what it isn't. Any questions? Okay. The third strategy, acquiring and responding to evidence of understanding. This is AKA checking for understanding. In these schools, we see teachers constantly checking to see if kids are getting it. And they're asking the majority of kids. And they're asking questions. I've heard a lot of teachers say things like, and I did it too, everybody get it? Right? Or, oh, you guys all get that, right? And it's not really, I don't think it's ever intended to be a checking for understanding, but it's just kind of a question that gets floated out there. These teachers plan the questions they're going to ask the kids and the intervals at which they will ask them so that they can use them to identify who's got it, who doesn't have it, and what I'm going to do next. So here we see whiteboards, we see student-to-student talk, turn and talk, we see sharing, we see teachers walking around the room monitoring. We see some of the new digital products that are out there, the clickers or plickers, I don't know if you've seen that one yet, where kids can give an answer anonymously and the teacher can tell who it is, but the kid doesn't know that, I mean, you don't have Lynn's name up there that says she didn't get it right. They use small group instruction, even at the high school level, to check for understanding. So they pull a group of kids and they engage them in discussion or in reading something, and then they can tell right there who's getting it and who's not getting it. The biggest piece is what they do with it when they figure it out, because often you'll see teachers checking for understanding, and the whiteboard goes up and you look and there are 3 or 4 kids there who are wrong, and the teacher kind of goes on because it haven't been thinking much about what am I going to do with those 3 kids. It could be as simple as saying, when the kids go to independent work, you and you, come up here with me, and we'll pull them up and talk to them and work in a small group, or some other kind of intervention that takes place. But the most important thing is responding to that. I'm sure you've had the experience where you are delivering a lesson and the kids are kind of looking at you, and then you say, okay, everybody, how about if we start doing this? And you look around and nobody's doing anything. And you go, okay, but we got to stop here. Let's pull it back and start over again. That's the kind of response that we need when things aren't going as we would hope they would go and kids aren't understanding, rather than just letting it go or going on. And for a lot of teachers, they're thinking, I don't have time. I do not have time to teach this over again. I have to move on. This is kind of a constant thing, and the last two, the one here, refusing to allow students to fall behind. One of the principals of the schools that won our award is a school in San Diego that was a large comprehensive high school that was divided into 4 individual schools. This is the Kearney School of International Business, and she's a tough cookie, but she's got an amazing school. When they divided up the schools, none of the other principals wanted the kids who were English learners, and because they were worried about their scores. And she said, I'll take them. Well, she won our award, but none of those other schools won our award. And one of the days we interviewed her, she shared with us a story. She was going on her walkthroughs and observing teaching and learning. She went into a classroom, and there was a young man sitting way at the back, slouched down. He had his hoodie over his head, just kind of like this with his head down. And he lifted his head up at one point, and she looked at him, and she went like this. And he started walking toward her, and she said, come on with me. And they went out in the hallway, and he said, what? I wasn't doing nothing. And she said, exactly, and you may not do that in my school. So it's that kind of boldness and courage and commitment and passion and fearlessness that we see in these schools, where kids with their heads down, or kids who aren't paying attention, or the ever popular, I'm not going to bother you if you don't bother me, attitude is gone. And that takes courage and commitment and passion. This last piece is one of my favorite stories. I wish Joe was here to tell it because it's really his story. But he was down in Brazosport, Texas, in the first round, really a groundbreaking round of research on high-performing urban schools. Dr. Rohr's smiling. And he was down there at a high school that had just been in the tank. It was at the bottom. It was horrible. And now all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, after a couple years, it's getting great results. And he went down to visit, and he finished with the visit. And he walked into the principal's office, and he said, Doug, hey, this is amazing. I just can't even believe what I'm seeing here. What has happened? What are you doing now that you weren't doing before? And he said, Doug looked at him, and he said, after a pause, he said, you know about feeding chickens, don't you? And Joe went, why didn't you enlighten me about this? And he said, well, when you feed chickens, you go into the barn and you strap on your feed bag, you go out into the yard and you toss the food to the chickens, right? You toss it to them. And if they eat it, great. If they don't, well, it's okay because you fed them. And he said, that's how we were teaching. We were teaching like we were feeding the chickens. We would strap on our lesson plans, we'd go into our classrooms, and we'd throw out the information. And if the kids got it, fine. And if they didn't, we taught them, and they didn't get it. And he said, we don't do that anymore. So in these schools, we don't see that. We don't see chicken feeding. There's no more, well, we taught them, but they didn't get it. Here's the what it is and what it isn't. Questions or comments from anybody? Connecting content with student interests, backgrounds, cultures, and knowledge. This is a hard one. And yet sometimes these teachers make this look so easy. Part of the way into this, or I guess maybe the only way into this, is we have teachers who know their students really well. They've taken the time to understand them, their families, their lived experiences, what they like, what they don't like, what they can do well, what they don't do well. And the teachers infuse that knowledge as they create lesson plans that aim to connect new material, unfamiliar material, with things they already know. It's schema theory. If you know anything about that, got all these little schema boxes in your head, and new information comes in and meets one of the schemas of that information, and you decide whether you're going to accept it or reject it. And a lot of that has to do with whether you can connect from what you already know to what this new knowledge is. And the teachers in these schools do this by tapping into student interests, into their lived experiences, into their backgrounds. Or great experiences in a school. This is another one Joe went to. I did not go to this school. But it was a classroom, probably upper elementary. And the teacher brought into the classroom, remember when electronic keyboards were really big? And put the electronic keyboard down in front of the kids, and they all said, "Oh, what's that, Mr. Brown? What are you doing? Where'd you get that? What are we going to do?" And he invited the kids up, and he said, "You guys know what this is, right?" "Yeah, that's a keyboard. I've seen that on TV, or whatever. My brother's in a band." And he said, "Yeah, it's a keyboard." And he said, "So what do you know about this?" "Well, you've got middle C here," and he taps on middle C, and then, hits the keys up this way and hits the keys down this way. And he said, "What happens when you move up the keyboard this direction? What happens to the sound?" "Oh, it gets higher, it gets higher." "That's right. What happens when you go down?" "Oh, it gets lower, it gets lower." And he turned the keyboard into a number line. And middle C became 0. And as you moved to this direction, the numbers are positive. They increase, and what increases? The sound of the note. And when you moved in this direction, the tones dropped, and those were your negative numbers. Now, I'm willing to bet you those kids never forgot that, right? Okay. So that's the kind of thing that we see in these schools. I have a principal I'm working with in Bryan, Texas, and he's working on this particular thing, and he's really struggling with it because his teachers got the idea that this means fun, that if you just do fun stuff, the kids will get it. Fun is good if it's likely to get the kids to master the concept that you want them to master. Oh, yeah, that's right. Questions about this one? Okay, here we go. Student vocabulary. Vocabulary, academic or otherwise, is gatekeeper to knowledge, to mastery, right? If we don't know what the words mean, we're not going to get the concepts. And so in these schools, where in many cases a lot of the kids are English learners, whether they speak another language or not, vocabulary is really critical. And so the teachers in these schools will pre-identify the critical vocabulary for each lesson. It's posted, it's introduced. Kids are given multiple opportunities to use those words in original sentences and in original writing. We do not see the old, here's your 10 or 12 vocabulary words. I want you to look them up in the dictionary, write down the definition, and then use them in a sentence, which we know doesn't work. Those vocabulary words need to come from the authentic learning, whether it's from a novel they're reading or the science materials or social studies or mathematics. So they spend a lot of time with vocabulary. There are word walls in these schools, but they're not just wallpaper. They actually use the word walls during the lesson to help kids understand the words. Often the words are accompanied by a picture of that particular word and then a definition. But vocabulary is absolutely critical in these schools. Questions? Practice. We know there's an association between practice and mastery, right? If you think about pianists or ballet dancers or other artists or athletic people who are excellence in athletics, it's all about practice. Once you have the skill or the concept, you practice it over and over and over again to achieve automaticity. And so we know practice is important. The critical thing here is not to allow students to practice what they don't already know. If you do that, there's a saying out there that says practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. And then we have to unlearn it. So in these schools, teachers do not release students to work independently until they are reasonably sure they're going to be able to do it right. Practice comes after enough guided instruction, enough of the I do, you do, we do. And I've been sharing with people in this one district, they have added another do in there. So it's an I do, you do, to do, we do, which I really like. I thought that was pretty cool. But you're giving them enough opportunities to be successful before they practice. Another concern that I have seen is in the use of workstations or centers. A lot of districts that's the new big thing. I want to see centers in your classroom. I want to see workstations. And teachers are complying and doing that. But what's happening in the workstations isn't of very high quality. And in some cases, the kids get there and they don't really know what to do or how to do, and the time becomes wasted. So those independent practice opportunities have to be planned for as well as first instruction. The last piece here is about grading, and I think these conversations need to take place in schools. These folks have decided on employing policies that make it more likely that kids will want to do the work. In other words, if I go home and I do my homework and I spend 2 hours on it and I turn it in but I forgot to put my name on it, if you take it and either give me a 0, not you, but a teacher, or back in my day, tear it up, then I'm probably not likely to try to do that again, right? So I think we have to have real good conversations about how we grade, why we grade, and what it means to get an A, a B, a C, or whatever. But grading policies also influence the degree to which kids will do homework, for example. Some of these schools, it's interesting, it's kind of a range. Some schools have decided that kids will do homework. They're going to have that expectation for them. Other schools have decided there will not be homework. We're just not going to send it home because the kids go home, they have to babysit, they take care of grandma, whatever the case may be. So it's up to you, but at least being consistent about what that is. And here's the what it is and what it isn't. Was there a question? Oh, a question.
Go back to the I do, you do.
Yes.
You're two. What form of two are we saying?
Two, yes, so you two. So it gives you an extra opportunity. Now you've done it with the teacher. The teacher's done it. You've done it with the teacher. Now you do it with a partner, and then you do it by yourself. I just thought that was really cool. I had never heard that before. Sure. Anybody else have a question? Feel free. Yes.
I wanted to ask about the vocab. I'm assuming that expanding vocabulary, students' vocabulary, I would assume that it wasn't like a locked vocab part of the day. It was
No.
across content areas.
Yes, it's mostly what we see is the vocabulary as the teacher's teaching the math lesson or the English language arts lesson or the social studies, the critical vocabulary for that lesson becomes central. And the kids are put in positions to use it, but they're also, if they don't, they're also stopped and reminded, no, what's the word for that? The other thing that I should mention here is we see lots of use of sentence frames in these schools that also make it really so much easier for kids. And response kinds of frames, like if you're having a conversation with someone, you say, I like what you said, I disagree because. So there are those kinds of things too that are really providing a strong structure for them to build their academic language and their sentences. Thank you for asking that. Anybody else? So now we are at the last two of the practices, which, as I mentioned, are the affective side of teaching and learning. And we know that we have to build relationships with the kids, especially the kids who need it the most. I mean, all kids need it, but I think kids who live in poverty, kids who have these struggles at home, school is their oasis. It should be this beautiful place that they come every day where they are valued, cared for, respected, and teachers have high expectations for you. So often in these situations, there's no lack of love with regard to the teachers and the kids, but some teachers perceive the love as pity. And I can't possibly ask this of you because look what you go home to every day. And boy, I understand that. I know the stories, and I get where that comes from. But to really love them is to have that expectation for them, because you may be the only one who does. And they need to know that they're capable of that work. So in making students feel valued and capable, here's what we see in these schools. And I know this first one seems like, well, really that has to be up there? But yeah, it does. In these schools, classrooms are, we're not always in beautiful buildings like this. I mean, a lot of these schools are not gorgeous places. But inside the school door, they are. Everything is clean. The rooms are filled with student work, high quality, current student work, not some ratty old paper from September the 10th. And not the 85% that Lynne got, because she rarely gets anything above a 60, and I don't want to make her feel bad. There are other ways to make her feel good without saying this is the best you can do. So we see beautiful classrooms, clean, organized. Teachers are expressing a genuine interest in student ideas. They're courteous, they're respectful, they don't yell or scream at kids. They provide very specific praise to students rather than just a nice job or good paper. It's clear, this is what I liked that you did. They, and again, I already talked about the posting of high quality student work. So they make the schoolrooms feel warm, welcoming, and they send a strong message that we care about you and we care about your education. Questions or comments?
I guess I had a quick question about
Yes.
this one.
Yes.
So, I just wanted to know what these schools look like with kids who have like major meltdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Because where I taught for a long time, having a really clean environment was really important to me. But like, if certain kids had meltdowns, the entire board would just come down. Like all student work, like they wanted everyone to feel what they were feeling. And I was just wondering if you saw a lot of these kinds of things in these particular schools, and what kind of reactions, or like how did those teachers deal with that?
Yeah, I know that's a reality. I think it's why a lot of urban schools don't have a lot of stuff up on the walls. In these schools, that's not the case. The stuff is up. And I have never seen that happen in a school. I'm sure it does. My guess is that they put it right back up again because of the message that sends. And the shame maybe that child would feel coming into that classroom and seeing that the stuff that was up there that she ripped down is not going back up. So that would be my guess, but I really can't answer that from experience. Anybody else? Okay, last one. Leading students to love learning. In these schools, we see teachers who exude, and not in a fake kind of, acty way. I've seen some of that too. But in these schools, these teachers exude excitement about the content they teach. Even if it's corny, oh my gosh, I'm such a math nerd, but I love math. Or I really like grammar and diagramming sentences. Whatever the case is, and that was me, sorry. But that catches on with kids, even if at first they think it's really corny and they kind of go, oh yeah, right. But pretty soon they come along with you because they see that you're honest about it, that you really do love it. It's just so important, that joy factor in schools, that kids see teachers who love the content they teach and love what they do. These teachers help students also understand the importance of why they're learning, what they're learning. I'm going to say in reality, I don't know that I have an answer for that with everything that we teach, but with the majority of things, I think you can give them a real valid reason as to why this is important to their overall education and life experience. They provide opportunities for kids to manipulate objects or work with technology or infuse the arts. In one school down in Florida, Southside Museum School, the kids had actual pig hearts in their hands while they talked about circulation. Or they are using, whatever the case may be, there's an object that goes along with every single lesson. And you can think about how powerful that would be. That's something you're not going to forget there either. They also provide students with leadership opportunities from little bitties all the way up to high school. I see kindergartners up at the board for the morning calendar with the pointers, pointing out all the sounds while the kids say them. And those leadership opportunities, the opportunities for kids to present their work, to share what they know, to lead things, stick with us. Any of you ever selected to be teacher of the day when you were in middle school or junior high or high school? Really? I was. Were you too? Maybe that's a bygone era. I don't know. Yeah, but I never forgot it. It was fabulous. And they encourage, I already talked about this, but student-to-student interaction. Way more students talking to students than teachers talking at students. Questions about any of these practices? Is there a question? Yes.
I'm just curious, what kind of sustainability do you see over time?
I'm really glad you asked that. It depends. The schools that win our award have to provide excellent data for 2 years in a row. Now, we have more than a few of the schools who have won our award who would no longer win our award because what happened? The leader left. And it's very sad, but it's true. And that's why what we talked about this morning at our conversation is how are we going to think about the district work in the context of supporting schools and leaders so that when the leader walks away, because the leader always will, right? It doesn't fall apart. But we do not, we're a really small center, and so we haven't had an opportunity to really follow people, but we have had schools that have won reapply for the award. They can apply, if they're a bronze level winner or a finalist, they can apply the next year. If they're gold or silver, they have to wait for 3 years. And we've had people apply who the next time they applied, they didn't qualify. Now, a lot of other stuff's happened. We've changed our standards and our assessments are different too from 3 years ago, but it's an issue. It's an issue. I'm glad you asked that. Yes?
I'm also curious to know how many of the schools are charter schools?
We have quite a few charter schools, but not the majority.
Okay.
I can't remember off the top of my head. This year we have 2 high schools from Brownsville, Texas, I think, that are early college high schools. That model is seemingly becoming very, very effective. These 2, or this one that I'm thinking about, the other one, I'm not sure if it's in Brownsville or not, neither of them have entrance requirements, which is uncommon in early college high schools. Many of them do. But charter schools, there are 2 charter schools that if you come to the symposium, you can visit, both in San Diego. One's a K-8, one's a K-12, and they've both won our award. So we've had several, but it's not the majority. Anybody else? Okay. What does this look like in practice? Well, let's see if we can take a look. This is a video of a classroom in Duluth, Georgia, which is right outside of Atlanta, Gwinnett County. Does anybody know where that is? Okay, do you know where it is? Okay, I lived in Gwinnett for like 5 minutes. Really, it was 5 months. But yeah, this is an urban school, Harris Elementary School. I think this is a 3rd grade classroom. Could be 2nd, but I'm not really sure. And I wanted you to have an opportunity. Remember I said that they have to turn in 2 videos of teaching and learning? This is one of the ones that their school sent. This school won our silver level award, and there was some discussion about whether it should be the gold level winner, and another school won out. But this is a very nice school. And this is one lesson. You'll see that there is more than one teacher in the room, so I think it might be a co-teaching model, and then I think there might be an aide in there or something. So there are plenty of teachers. But the woman to the left, I believe, is the teacher of record. She's the one who does the most instruction. And you should have, or if you don't worry about it, but I provided you a very lengthy observation form that might make your head spin, so you don't have to use it. But what I'd like you to do is just watch and keep your mind on finding any evidence that this teacher is teaching for mastery, using any of these strategies, any of these classroom teaching practices. And then we'll talk about it on the other side. I'm going to need to put sound in here. Can I do that?
Sure, come on. Go ahead and play with the,
Just play it
goes through
anyway?
each student.
Oh, it
Yeah.
does. That's cool.
Well, what I'd like us to think about today
Very good.
is I want you to put yourself in that same situation. You're a little girl or a little boy and you're walking up to a water fountain and it says whites only, and you take a sip, and here comes this big man and pushes you down. What would you do? How would you feel? What would you think? You're just thinking about that, okay? In a moment, I'm going to ask you to turn and talk to a partner about your point of view of the situation. And a conversation that you guys might have might look a little something like this.
Yes, that's fine.
Miss Trio, my point of view on this situation would be that I would be bold. I would feel confident and stand up to this man who pushed me down. I might stand up, I might even put my hands on my hip to let him know that I am feeling confident and bold in this situation.
Well, I respect how you would react to that situation, but I know myself, and I know that if I was in her shoes, or in her white socks in this case, I think I would feel a little timid. I feel that maybe I would curl up in a ball, because sometimes when people feel that way, I feel that way. I curl up in a ball, and I would probably hide my face. Sometimes when I get really timid, I freeze. Like I don't want to move. I can't move because I'm scared.
Oh, so timid, I didn't really know that word, but when you were talking about your evidence, crawling up in a ball and feeling scared, I'm thinking that you might have been shy. Is that right?
That's right. And I could tell when you were describing how you would feel, that you would feel brave. I know bold, if she's saying she would stand up and put her hands on her side and stand up to the man, I can tell that that must mean that you're feeling brave, right?
Okay, right. So friends, when I say go, I want you to have the same type of conversation. What is your point of view on the situation? Go. To the man.
You're mean?
Oh, you might say, you're mean. So you would feel very angry. Ethan, what would your point of view on the situation be?
I probably hit him.
Why? So how would you be feeling?
I would be feeling very angry.
You know what a great word for that is? Frustrated or aggressive. So your point of view on the situation, Ethan, is that you might be feeling aggressive. Good. Sophie, what about you? Worried. So you would feel more like Miss Trio. Yes? Why worried? Yes. So is some of your point of views different or the same as the character?
Mine is different.
Yours is different. What about you? Different. And yours is the same. Very good thinking, friends. Come back to me, friends. Come back to me, friends.
I heard some really good discussion,
I
Ms.
did
Broish.
too. I did too. I can't wait to share. Friends, we would like you to share out your point of views. So if I call on you, please share your partner and share your thinking. Sunshine, we're listening.
My partner was Destiny and DeAndre.
Yes.
And my thinking was I'd be furious because I wouldn't like it if someone would push me down. So I would stand up for myself and tell the man that this is a free country. So it's not fair. Only white people can only drink it.
Love that, Sunshine. So was your point of view different or the same as that of the character? It was different. Excellent. Who else would like to share their partner and share their thinking? Kenny, we're listening.
My partner was Giwan, and his thinking was that he would feel scared because the man had pushed her or if it was him down.
So his point of view was similar to that of the characters. Good, friends. In our stories, sometimes our point of views are the same as the characters or the narrator or the authors, and sometimes they are different. Friends, today, as we continue reading our Just Right books, I want you to be thinking, what is the character's point of view? What is the author's point of view? Is my point of view the same or different than that of the characters, the author, or the narrator?
Think about if you agree or do you disagree with maybe how the author thinks or feels about the subject, the topic of your book as well.
Great. Friends, when I call your group, please get busy on your reading. Red group and green group. So we have been talking about point of view, the perspective from which an author or a character or a narrator tells a story. And just real quickly remind us, what are those two different point of views? Destiny. Third person and first person point of view, okay? Friends, today I would like to introduce a new book to us. This book is called Rocks. Friends, does this topic look kind of familiar to you? Yes. What have we been studying in science, Elijah? We have been studying rocks and minerals. So friends, we're going to engage in this book today called Rocks. Before we get started with our reading, I want you to take a look at the cover of this book. What do you notice about the cover of this book, Dylan? Okay, so there's different types of rocks. What else do you notice, Destiny? Oh, so you're already noticing the luster. Love it. You're already noticing the luster of some of these rocks. Think about features, though. What makes a book a fiction book or a non-fiction book? What is this, Dylan? But how do you know that, Dylan? What's your evidence? So you're seeing a photograph on the front cover of this book, which is a very good indication that this might be a nonfiction book. What are some other features we might see in this text that would allow us to know this is a nonfiction book, Kevin? Captions that have real facts about what? Okay, but where would the captions be located in the text? Yes, under a photograph. What other features might we see, Destiny? A glossary. What does that do for us as readers? Okay, and Jasmine? Oh, what does an index do for us as readers? Look at this. Index, photographs, more photographs, captions. So friends, can we say that this is probably a nonfiction book? Can we say that? Okay.
So when is the time of this book? When did Clara Barton live? Around what time?
Where is the law?
Well, let's look at the caption again. It says, Civil War. So can we make a good prediction that she lived around the Civil War time? Yeah, we sure can. Let's go to the next page, and I want to hear you read, okay?
At age 16, Sarah became a teacher. She taught in a one-room schoolhouse. People said she had a special gift. She made her students want to learn.
Now, I saw you reach this word, and you said schoolhouse. How did you know that word was schoolhouse? Okay. Right, good. And we know that that's a compound word, right? So as we're reading, we can use those type of skills to help us figure out some unknown words. All right, so let's stop here, and now let's go back to our question. Whose point of view is this book coming from?
Now, we've already predicted third person that the author is.
This is coming from Clara.
So, go ahead and take that.
Now, what are some ways we can figure out the point of view? We talked about, we look for pronouns, right? Did you see any pronouns that would be with first person point of view? Like I, me, my, myself. Did you see that in this book or in this chapter? All right, DeAndre, go ahead and read out loud for me.
The hardness of a mineral is a measure of how easy it is to scratch. You can test for hardness using items like fingernails, pins, or nails.
All right, so if you had a mineral in front of you right now, how would you test it out to see how hard it is?
Fingernails,
Mm-hmm.
pins, or nails.
Yeah, could I just scratch it on something and see if it's... Yeah, exactly. You got it. All right, keep going for me.
Another way is to test the hardness is to compare a nail to the middle 10 nails of this hole.
Good. Go ahead and read silently. Great job. Make sure you're sitting silently. Ethan, I'd like you to read out loud for me,
I would
please.
say the author's point of view.
He's excited because you saw an exclamation point. Good. Continue reading for me, please.
The purpose of this was formed. What is the purpose of bits of stars that had exploded or died? Long before our solar system was born. This means that everything on Earth, including its rocky crust, is made of stardust. This photograph shows the cloud of matter remaining after the death of a star.
What did you notice there, Kevin?
We're gonna be thinking about that the rest of this week. And what I want for you to do is I want you to
I think he learned something today. He's saying it out loud.
Oh, so he was restating a fact that he had learned. So Kevin, you were saying that the author's point of view is that he feels rocks are very interesting and important. So what evidence might you use from what you have already read to help support your thinking?
This means that every rock on Earth, including the rocky crust, is made of stardust.
Okay, and how does that? So we asked you today, while you were engaging in your Just Right books, to find evidence and think about the point of view in which your story was being told. Friends, to wrap up our learning for today, in a moment I'm going to ask you to share once again with your partner a book that you read today and what point of view it was written in and how you know. Go.
Okay, so what type of evidence did that provide you? Danny, how would you feel if somebody called you the wrong name, if you were in that character's shoes? Maybe feel a little sad? Because you're like, I've been here all year. How have you not learned my name, right? All right, why don't you share what you read with Lily?
What I'm going to ask you
to do is share your partner and share your partner's thinking. So I hope that you were listening. Destiny, we're listening to you.
My partner was Rachel.
Yes, we're listening.
And her book was the first person, and it said we will be best friends forever, and that's her evidence.
So we will be best friends forever. What part of that sentence was your evidence, Rachel? The we. And can you describe briefly what was going on?
It's when the little girl was talking to the alligator, and she was like, "Are you going to eat me?" And the alligator said no. And then she realized they were gonna be best friends forever.
Oh,
That's a
great.
good
So Rachel,
bar
if
right
you were
there,
in
isn't
that
it?
position, would you have felt the same way as the little girl or different?
The same way.
How would you have felt?
I would have felt happy.
So your point of view would have been the same as the characters. Excellent. Friends, as we continue to read tomorrow and days on, we're going to keep thinking about point of view and evidence of how we can determine point of view. And then if our point of view is different or similar than that of the characters, author, or narrator. Great job today.
Okay, I guess that bar, if someone's not going to eat you, that makes you your best friend forever, right? That works for me. Okay, we are over time, so these are questions that I would have engaged you in, but what I want to do is I'm looking for 3 people who can give me one thing you saw that indicated to you that this teacher had a focus on mastery. So I need one person first to give me any evidence. All right, there you are.
Everything that she said, question or whatever, every response from a student had to have evidence to back up the response.
Okay, so
They
she...
couldn't just say, oh, it was because of this.
Okay, so when she got a question, or she asked a question and a child gave a response, she asked them for evidence of that. What else?
The academic vocabulary that she used and expected her students to use.
Yes, very high level, right? Words like timid and I think one little kid said frustrated. So she was focused on that vocabulary piece, wasn't she? What else? Focus on mastery. Remember what that is now.
She not only, she expected the children to use full sentences
She did.
and introduce their partner by name.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
That was cool, right? And sometimes she had to have them say what the kid said, not what you said, right? So if focus on mastery is being really clear about what you want kids to know and be able to do by the end of that lesson, what do you think she wanted those kids to know and be able to do by the end of that lesson? Point of view. What particular thing about point of view? Is it similar or different from the character, the narrator, or the author? Now, I didn't see an objective posted. It could have been there. How did you know that that was her objective? That's all she talked about. That was everything she did was aimed at getting kids to master that one thing. She used all of these strategies you're talking about, but by the end of that lesson, she even finished it up with that, didn't she? She said, friends, next time we get together, I love that, don't you? Next time we get together, we're going to continue to talk about point of view. There is no question in that classroom what she wanted those kids to know and be able to do. So if you take that away let me see if I can talk. I've just about run out of talking skill, which is probably a good thing because we're over time, but if you take anything away from today, it's that clarity and that she's clear and the kids are clear. And everything she did was directly aligned at that. She didn't birdwalk over here or over here. She went straight ahead with that. You guys have been so kind. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Groff because she has big plans for you. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Have a good rest of the year. Thank you. You're welcome. You are welcome.
Okay, well, so thank you so much. This is wonderful. So, Lynne will be around for this next while to respond to any questions that you may have. So questions, and then we also have books. If anyone doesn't have a copy of their book, it's available out here in the lobby. And we also have a little bit of time if the school teams, we have rooms reserved for you if you want to do some debrief discussions with your school teams. I'm going to give you the room numbers for your school teams if you want to, if we would have maybe 20 minutes or something if you want to debrief a little bit about what you've heard today and how to move the work forward. So the rooms are, here we go. So Midvale will be in room 3155, and the facilitator is Janice Bradley. Copperview Elementary is in room 2155, just right above, with Beverly Herman. Lincoln Elementary is in 2151, again upstairs, with Jill Hale and Kara Gardner. And Roosevelt Elementary School is in 2147, second floor, with me. And Gateway Prep Academy is in room 1210, next door, with Ashley. So thank you to all of our guests today, the school teams we work with, and our other guests. Thank you so much for being here and for being part of our vision for creating these kinds of amazing schools in Utah for the students that we love so much. So thank you. We look forward to seeing you next time.